لا إله إلا الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر. So I've just recited the beginning of a surah that we often hear recited, right? In Surah Fajr. وَالْفَجْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, which Allah begins this surah with we say like a qasam, an oath, by the dawn, Fajr, and وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, the 10 nights. So, this is a very important ayah to reflect on, given that the time that we're in right now, the time of year, that in about, let's say, less than 2 weeks, inshallah, will be in the month of Dhul Hijjah. And that is, many of the mufassirin state that, you know how in this beginning of this surah, when it says, وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, the 10 nights, right? That many of the mufassirin, the commentators of the Quran, they state that these 10 nights that are being referred to are the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So, what does that mean for us? It means that, well, simply put, it's a very important time, right? And before we get into the details of any of the details of that, we'll have from now until the time starts, right, to try to take advantage of that opportunity. We have to, there was a more general question that I was thinking that we should, even contemplate on, that what is it that defines an act of ibadah, worship, right? What is it that defines an act of ibadah? And, it's often translated as worship. In the English language, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm doing some worship right now," We think this person must be just saying some specific prayer, some litany, some, it must, maybe they go to their place of, whatever religion they are, they go to a particular place of worship and they engage in some activity like that. And then, based on that definition, we as Muslims begin to think that when we say ibadah, that maybe that only refers to, like when we're making some specific dua, or reciting some Quran, or making salah, some specific act that we do, that is ibadah, separate from the rest of our lives. And actually we have to realize that the whole concept of ibadah has a much more much more general scope to it, a broad application. That if we see what's the meaning, the ma'na, what's the meaning of ibadah? It is it's the ita'atullah, any obedience to Allah, bi talab al-ajr, in seeking reward from Him. And that has both an external and an internal component, right? External and internal. What does that mean? Like internal, it starts with our beliefs. What are we told to believe in? We believe in something because Allah Ta'ala told us. He told us that this is a reality. This is what we have to believe in. And in terms of our external acts, we are told to do certain things in certain ways, and then we perform them, right? We do them how we think that, okay, we must now obey these commands that we have and fulfill them in order to do what? To receive a reward from Allah in the next life, right? So by that definition, it's not limited to certain certain acts that we do, like I said, just salah or just fasting, right? Specific acts of what we think of as being acts of devotion, right? So, in fact, if you look what many of the ulama have said to explain what ibadah truly is, to simplify it, one good explanation that I've heard, it is to do what Allah has instructed us to do at the time that He wants us to do it. It is to do what Allah Ta'ala wants us to do at the time and the place that He wants us to do it. Right? So this same type of thinking we can have in other scopes of other parts of life. We think for those like myself, okay, if you're working in let's say the medical field, it's all about giving the treatment that is indicated for that particular patient at that time. Like as an example, somebody comes in to the hospital, he's admitted he has a heart attack. ST elevation MI, for those, STEMI, he comes in. Somebody starts giving him, he says, okay, no big deal, we can treat it. We give him some fluids, give him IV fluids, maybe even give him some IV antibiotics. And then somebody comes and asks, some other doctor's there, the person who's the director of of that department, he comes in and he says, why are you giving this guy antibiotics? Why are you giving this guy fluids? He's got a serious heart attack over here. So then we might respond by saying, we help so many patients by giving these other treatments. We give antibiotics, they usually help people. We give IV fluids, they often help people. So it must be good now too. That's just what we always do. Anybody would tell you, okay, that's wrong. That's not the treatment that's needed at that time. There's something specific needed at that time to help that person, right? He's got to go, as they say, to the cath lab. He's got to get a cardiac catheterization, might need some work done on his heart to try to save him from that situation. It doesn't matter that we're trying to do something else that we think, or that the doctor might think at that time, this is probably good enough. This is probably good. Why? Because in general, it's something, that is usually helpful towards people. I don't think, in the end, basically, you wouldn't want to go to that doctor. Okay, that's the end. Nobody would want to do that. It's all about giving, like in that case, giving the treatment that is indicated for that specific situation. So, if we think, we all have, we're all patients, we're all sick in a way, right? We're more sick than anybody who just comes to just looking at it from the physical standpoint. We don't only have sickness, in our, in our bodies, but we know that diseases in the heart, right? We all have those. We're all patients in need of treatment. So we need the treatment that is indicated for us at any particular moment, right? And what is that treatment? That treatment would be whatever Allah Ta'ala indicates for us to do at that particular moment. For example, just to show, somebody thinks that, okay, the ultimate act of ibadah is just salah. So somebody's in salah. But what do we learn? If you study like the rules of salah, if there's somebody who's calling for help while you're praying, even a fard salah, and he's in imminent danger, the person might die. He might, there's something's gonna fall on him. He's gonna, he's just about, he needs help, otherwise, he needs to be saved. There's some imminent danger on this person. So if the person thinks that, oh, I could just ignore that, I'm just supposed to just continue in my prayer and ignore the danger to the other person, that's wrong. That's not what's indicated at that time. As the fuqaha, the ulama explained to us, what's needed is the person needs to go and help that person. And then he can continue his prayer afterwards. Other examples, like we think, okay, I'm reading the Quran, that's the best thing for me to do right now. Meanwhile, there's let's say you're doing that when you're at work. You're getting paid to do a certain job, right? You're getting paid to do a certain task, and you know that your employer wouldn't approve of that, right? So somebody's sitting there, okay, I'm just going to read Quran. It doesn't matter what's going on. Why? Because, generally speaking, reciting Quran is an act of ibadah. It's something we will get rewarded for. So we should do that all the time. But actually, that's not, again, that same idea. That's not what's indicated at that time. What we learn from Allah Ta'ala and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that when you're paid to do something, you must engage in whatever needs to be engaged in to fulfill that activity, right? To fulfill that payment that you're getting, whether it's at your job or some other task, right? So that's why we have to realize that concept of ibadah, which is trying to seek the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala, is broad. But it does have that one unifying factor, which is that we're trying to receive the pleasure and the reward from Allah Ta'ala. So, there are many other examples of that we can use. But why does it specifically come to mind at this time of year? If there's any time of year that shows us that ibadah is truly about doing what Allah has instructed us to do and doing what He wants us to do at the time that He wants us to do it and at the place that He wants us to do it. Right? It's this time of year, and we think about Hajj coming. Right? What is Hajj all about? It's like, can we just say, okay, can we just perform Hajj earlier after that particular time of year? Can we just perform it later? Or make it easier on ourselves, maybe let everybody do it then. We could just perform it wherever we are, set up something, set up a fake, set up like you have like Safa and Marwa, set up some mountain somewhere. No, you can't do that, right? Why is that? Because especially at this time of year in Dhul Hijjah, when it's coming, that is all about performing certain acts that can only be performed at that time and at that location. And that's not just limited to the people who are going to be able to go for Hajj. That same concept applies for everybody. Whether a person goes to perform Hajj or he does not, he's still going to be in those first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So, just in general about those days, we're going to have a lot of, again, it's just like at Ramadan time, you hear a lot of programs about that, a lot of information coming about how, the opportunities that are there. But in general, it's enough for us to know that the Prophet ﷺ said, in reference to these days, ما من أيام العمل الصالح أحب إلى الله فيهن من هذه الأيام. That there are not days in which righteous actions are more beloved to Allah in them than these days. And what days? Yani Ashara Dhul Hijjah. In the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. That this is a time of year in which good deeds are the most beloved to Allah Ta'ala. So let's say that we know the best thing to do for those who are lucky enough and they have the ability to do it is that, okay, they're able to go and perform Hajj. But let's say most of us are not able to go. So are we going to then does that mean we're missing out on the opportunity there, those 10 days? No, because not everybody is going to be able, although not everybody is going to be able to go, everybody is still going to be in that time. Everybody is still, whoever's alive, they're going to be in those first 10 days. Just like we talked about, remember, the days of Ramadan being blessed, right? In the same way, those days are blessed. So anybody who's there in the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, they'll be a part of that. They'll have that opportunity. But again, you see how, what we could compare it to is like, let's say you have some, not an exact comparison, but let's say there's some siblings, right? Like one of them has some achievement, he's getting rewarded, recognized, he's going to some special function, he's like graduating from something, getting some reward, right? Some special occasion that he's going to, right? And then he's getting his appropriate reward, the whole family goes and sees, like, wow, look at, they're feeling, mashallah, they're happy for that person. But then what might happen? Let's say there's a sibling, a younger sibling, and they're like, hey, look at, they say, oh, mom, dad, look at me too, I did this. Maybe he'll put on like if they're going to graduation, maybe the kid will put on like some graduation cap or put out their report card, oh, look, I finished third grade. That like something, right? What are they trying to do? They're trying to, in some way, emulate or be similar to, try to get a share of that same attention that the person who's actually, let's say, graduating, that he's getting, right? He's trying to get some of that love, that attention also. So in the same way, Allah Ta'ala has allowed us to get some of that reward, to get some of that attention, that special attention that comes in the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Like, for example, if you think for the ones who are not going for Hajj, the ones who go for Hajj, like I said, it's all about performing particular acts at particular times. Those things are not considered ibadah on any other day. Like when somebody goes for Hajj, let's say it's the Yom al-Arafah, standing on Arafah, right? On the day of Arafah. If somebody goes there the very next day, that's not going to count. That's not in itself. That's not going to be an act of ibadah anymore, right? It has to be done on that day. It's all about doing something at an appointed time. That's what's indicated. It's the indicated treatment for the person, we can say, right? Using our example. So in the same way, it's similar for us. We see a similar treatment, we can say, for those who are not able to go. Like by performing the udhiyah, the sacrifice, right? That is something that is unique on those days of Eid, right? That the upcoming days of Eid. That is something unique. It's for those days. If it's not done on the days of sacrifice, then what happens? Like, you could just perform it another day, perform it a week later, maybe perform it earlier, or maybe we could do something else in its place, right? Something better. Like, why would we have to go and sacrifice an animal? Somebody may ask. What can't we just do salah instead, right? We'll pray all night. No, the answer obviously is no, that's not what's indicated. That's not the indicated treatment for the Muslims at that time. But in the same way, that indicated treatment is unique for that time period, right? Just like for people who go to Hajj, they have to perform certain acts on certain days. Even while they're performing the rites of Hajj, of Umrah, everything, it has to be in a certain place, a certain time. So that same concept applies to us with the udhiyah, the sacrifice, right? That if you have to do it on those days. If it's not done afterwards, it's just like any other sacrifice. It could be, of course, rewarded, but it's not the same reward that's mentioned in the hadith that that is amongst the most blessed of deeds when it's done in those days, right? That is amongst the most blessed of deeds that's done on those days. As it says in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا عَمِلَ ابْنُ آدَمْ يَوْمَ النَّحْرِ عَمَلًا أَحَبَّ إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ مِنْ هِرَاقَةِ الدَّمِ. That there is no action that is dearer to Allah on the days of sacrifice, ayyamun nahr, than the sacrificing of animals. There's no action that is dearer to Allah during the days of sacrifice than, we can say, the spilling of the blood of the animal. Because why? That is clearly telling us that is the indicated treatment. That is what needs to be done at that time. Like I gave that other example of the patient going in the hospital. He needs to go get that procedure for his heart. It doesn't matter what else we're doing for him. It doesn't matter how good, it doesn't matter what other medication you're giving him. It doesn't matter what other ideas that are there. The action that is going to be most beloved to that patient, what he really needs, is getting that cardiac procedure done. Right? That's what's needed at that time. So in the same way, only in these days, that is the most beloved of actions. Right? So we can relate then, if we think about that, that applies to us, the ones who are not going for Hajj, how that applies to us. Just like those who are going to Hajj, they have to do certain acts that they only are doing at that time and at that place. For us, in the same way, we have the opportunity to do certain acts, and you can say we're tested in that way also, that we have to make sure we do it on those days. Right? That we share in that same, in a way, the same feeling of the people who go for Hajj, what they experience. This is a mercy from Allah Ta'ala, right? That He allows all the people, all the Muslims, not just the ones who are going for Hajj, to experience that. So, and there are other acts too that are, they're not difficult to do. Like, we say, like, even fasting one day in the first 10 days. There are many hadith about that. We can hear, but like fasting in the first 10 days, performing good deeds in general, making dhikr, making the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala. Right? In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أَعْظَمُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَلَا أَحَبُّ إِلَيْهِ الْعَمَلُ فِيهِنَّ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْأَيَّامِ. The same, that in those 10 days, that there are not days in which good actions are more beloved to Allah than those days. من هذه الأيام العشر. Then what did the Prophet ﷺ say? فَأَكْثِرُوا فِيهِنَّ مِنَ التَّهْلِيلِ وَالتَّكْبِيرِ وَالتَّحْمِيدِ. So make abundant tahleel, saying La ilaha illallah, takbir, saying Allahu Akbar, and tahmeed, saying Alhamdulillah. Right? We could do that almost any time. Very easy for us to do. But this is, at that time, it's so easy to do, but the reward is multiplied. The Prophet ﷺ is saying specifically at that time you should do that. So, it's just a reminder for us, even without focusing so much on the specifics of what has to be done. First, we have to understand the concept of ibadah, right? That is all about doing what Allah Ta'ala wants us to do in that particular situation, right? At that particular time and then at that particular place. And we can apply that to all the different aspects of our lives and hope to obtain Allah's pleasure that way in no matter what we're doing. So, I make dua that Allah allows us to be amongst those who can take advantage of those blessed days and all the opportunities that we have in our lives. And just briefly, a few words, I'll do the brief khutbah in Arabic. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulih al-kareem. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر. وقد روي في الحديث عن ابن عباس قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما من أيام العمل الصالح فيهن أحب إلى الله من هذه الأيام العشر. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام ما من أيام أحب إلى الله أن يتعبد له فيها من عشر ذي الحجة يعدل صيام كل يوم منها بصيام سنة وقيام كل ليلة منها بقيام ليلة القدر. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام: صيام يوم عرفة إني أحتسب على الله أن يكفر السنة التي قبله والسنة التي بعده، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله يستعين واستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرًا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة. من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد، ومن يعصهما فإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك، وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات، وبارك على محمد وأزواجه وذريته. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل، ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Straighten your lines so we'll fill in the gaps. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر إن قرآن الفجر كان مشهودا ومن الليل فتهجد به نافلة لك عسى أن يبعثك ربك مقاما محمودا وقل رب أدخلني مدخل صدق وأخرجني مخرج صدق واجعل لي من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وننزل من القرآن ما هو شفاء ورحمة للمؤمنين ولا يزيد الظالمين إلا خسارا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة